The bullet missed her head by 3 inches and shattered the glass window behind the bar, where Hannah Thompson was pouring whiskey for a table of miners who scattered like tumbleweeds in a dust storm. She dropped to the floor, her heart hammering against her ribs as more shots rang out into the hot Arizona afternoon. Nobody came to check if she was hurt. Nobody ever did. The owner of the Red Rock Saloon, a grizzled man named Dutch Miller, just yelled at her from behind an overturned table to stop wasting time and get back to serving drinks once the shooting stopped. That was life in Seligman, Arizona in 1882, and Hannah had learned long ago that the only person who would ever look out for her was herself. She was 22 years old and had been working at the saloon for 3 years, ever since her father died in a mining accident and left her with nothing but debts she could not pay. Her mother had passed when Hannah was just a girl, victim to the harsh desert fever that swept through the territory every few summers. Hannah had no siblings, no family, no one who cared whether she lived or died. She worked 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, dodging grabbing hands and crude remarks, sleeping in a tiny room above the saloon that was hotter than an oven in the summer and barely warmer than the desert night in the winter. The shooting finally stopped. Hannah stood up slowly, brushing the broken glass from her brown cotton dress, checking her arms for cuts. A few small ones, nothing serious. She had survived worse. She picked up the whiskey bottle that had somehow not broken, set it on the bar, and went to fetch a broom. That was when she first saw him. He was standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the brilliant Arizona sun, tall and broad-shouldered, with a black hat pulled low over his face. He stepped inside and Hannah could see him more clearly. He was perhaps 25 or 26, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and eyes the color of storm clouds. He wore the typical outfit of a working cowboy: dusty trousers, scuffed boots, a worn leather vest over a faded blue shirt. A gun belt hung low on his hips, and he carried himself with the easy confidence of a man who knew how to use it. He walked directly to the bar where Hannah was sweeping up the glass. Most men ignored her unless they wanted something, but this man looked at her with an intensity that made her pause mid-sweep. "Are you hurt?" he asked. His voice was deep and carried genuine concern. Hannah blinked. "What? Are you hurt?" He repeated, his gray eyes scanning her face, then dropping to her arms where small cuts were beginning to bead with blood. "You were right in the line of fire." "I am fine," she said automatically, because that was what she always said. No one wanted to hear about her problems. But he did not walk away. Instead, he reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a clean handkerchief, extending it toward her. "Your arm is bleeding." Hannah stared at the handkerchief as if it were a snake. When had anyone ever offered her anything without expecting something in return? "I have rags in the back," she said stiffly. "This is cleaner," he said, still holding it out. When she did not take it, he set it on the bar between them. "My name is Isaac Zimmerman. I just hired on at the Double J Ranch about 5 miles north of town." "Good for you," Hannah said, returning to her sweeping. She did not want to be rude, but kindness from strangers was usually a prelude to something worse. Better to keep her distance. Isaac did not seem offended. "What is your name?" "Hannah Thompson." She did not know why she answered. Maybe it was the way he was looking at her, as if she were a person and not just a saloon girl to be dismissed or harassed. "Nice to meet you, Miss Thompson." He tipped his hat to her, a gesture so old-fashioned and courteous that it caught her off guard. Then he turned and walked to a table in the corner, settling into a chair with his back to the wall, the way men did when they wanted to see everything happening in the room. Hannah finished sweeping, painfully aware of his presence. She could feel his eyes on her as she moved around the saloon, wiping down tables, taking orders, bringing drinks. It was not the leering stare she was used to. It was something different, protective almost. It made her uncomfortable because she did not know what to do with it. When she brought him his whiskey, he thanked her politely and asked, "Does that happen often?" "The shooting, often enough," Hannah said. "This is a mining town. Men get drunk, get angry, get violent. It is just the way things are. And your boss does not worry about your safety." Isaac's jaw tightened slightly. Hannah almost laughed. "Dutch. He worries about his liquor bottles and his poker tables. Everything else can take care of itself." Isaac's eyes darkened, but he did not say anything more. Hannah walked away, trying to ignore the strange flutter in her chest. She had learned not to hope for anything from anyone, and she was not about to start now because some cowboy with kind eyes asked if she was hurt. But the next day, Isaac came back. It was mid-morning, a slow time at the saloon, and Hannah was washing glasses behind the bar. He walked in, glanced around the nearly empty room, and came straight to her. "Good morning, Miss Thompson," he said, removing his hat. "Good morning," Hannah replied cautiously. "Whiskey? No, thank you. I just wanted to check that you were all right after yesterday." Hannah set down the glass she was holding. "You came into town just to ask me that." "I was coming into town anyway," Isaac said, but the tips of his ears turned slightly red. "To pick up supplies for the ranch. But yes, I wanted to make sure you were all right." "I am fine," Hannah said, bewildered. "I told you I was fine. Those cuts looked painful. They were small. I have had worse." She did not know what else to say. This man was clearly not going to leave until he was satisfied she was actually all right, which was such a foreign concept to her that she hardly knew how to process it. Isaac nodded slowly. "Well, if you need anything, the Double J is not far, just north on the main road." "Why would I need anything from you?" The words came out harsher than she intended, but Hannah had learned to be suspicious of generosity. If Isaac was hurt by her tone, he did not show it. "No reason, I suppose. Just wanted you to know." He put his hat back on, tipped it to her again, and left. Hannah stood behind the bar, staring at the door long after he was gone. She did not understand him. Men did not check on saloon girls. They used them, dismissed them, sometimes hurt them, but they did not check on them. That evening, Isaac came back again. The saloon was busier now, filled with miners and ranch hands looking to spend their pay on cards and liquor. Hannah was rushing between tables, her feet aching, her head pounding from the noise and the smoke. She barely noticed Isaac slip in and take his usual table in the corner. But she noticed when a drunk miner grabbed her wrist as she passed, pulling her roughly toward him. "Come sit on my lap, sweetheart," he slurred, his breath reeking of whiskey and tobacco. "Let go," Hannah said firmly, trying to pull away. This happened at least once a week. Usually she could handle it with a sharp word or a well-placed elbow, but this miner was bigger than most and his grip was like iron. Before she could react further, Isaac was there. He did not say anything, just placed his hand on the miner's shoulder with enough pressure that the man looked up, startled. "The lady asked you to let go," Isaac said quietly. His voice was calm, but there was steel underneath it. The miner looked from Isaac to Hannah and back again. He must have seen something in Isaac's face that convinced him not to push his luck, because he released Hannah's wrist and turned back to his drink with a muttered curse. Isaac waited until Hannah stepped back, then returned to his table without another word. Hannah stood there for a moment, rubbing her wrist, trying to understand what had just happened. Then she went back to work, but her eyes kept drifting to the corner where Isaac sat, nursing a single glass of whiskey and watching her with that same protective look. The pattern continued. Isaac came to the saloon 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, and evening. He never stayed long unless it was busy, but he always made sure to see her, to check that she was all right. He started to learn her routine. He would come in the morning when she was sweeping up from the night before, in the afternoon during the quiet hours when she could actually breathe, and in the evening when the saloon was at its most chaotic and dangerous. At first, Hannah resented it. She did not need a guardian. She had survived this long without one. But Isaac never made her feel weak or incapable. He just made her feel seen. After a week of his visits, she stopped pretending to be annoyed and started looking forward to seeing him. "You know you do not have to keep checking on me," she said one afternoon as she wiped down the bar and Isaac sat on one of the stools. "I know," he said simply. "So why do you?" Isaac was quiet for a moment, turning his glass in his hands. "My mother died when I was young," he finally said. "My father worked her to death on our farm in Missouri. She never complained, never asked for help, just kept going until one day her heart gave out. I was 14. After she died, I realized that no one had ever taken care of her. Not my father, not the neighbors, not anyone. She had just kept giving and giving until there was nothing left." He looked up at Hannah, and she saw old pain in his eyes. "I swore then that if I ever saw someone who needed looking after, I would do it, even if they did not think they needed it." Hannah's throat tightened. She looked away, busying herself with a glass that did not need cleaning. "I am not your mother," she said quietly. "No," Isaac agreed. "But you are someone who works too hard and takes too many risks and has no one worrying whether you come home safe at night, so I worry. Is that all right?" Hannah did not answer right away because she did not trust her voice. Finally, she said, "I suppose I cannot stop you." She saw the hint of a smile on his face. "No, madam, I suppose you cannot." As the weeks passed, Hannah found herself watching for Isaac's arrivals. The saloon felt a little less oppressive when she knew he would walk through that door. He never asked anything of her, never expected her gratitude, just checked that she was well and went about his day. But slowly, their conversations grew longer. She learned that he had come to Arizona from Missouri 2 years ago, looking for work and a fresh start. He had worked on ranches across the territory before settling at the Double J, which was owned by a fair man named Jack Jenkins who treated his workers decently. Isaac was good with horses, patient and gentle in a way that made them trust him. Hannah told him about her father, about how he had been a good man but unlucky, always chasing the next claim that would make them rich, about how his death had left her with nothing. She did not tell him about the loneliness, about lying awake at night in her stifling room and wondering if this was all her life would ever be. But somehow she thought he understood anyway. One evening in late July, when the heat was so intense that even the scorpions seemed to be hiding, a fight broke out in the saloon between two rival mining crews. It started with accusations of claim jumping and escalated to fists, and then to knives. Hannah tried to stay out of the way, pressed against the bar as men crashed into tables and chairs splintered. Dutch had long since disappeared into his office, locking the door behind him and leaving her to fend for herself. A body slammed into the bar inches from where she stood, and Hannah flinched back. Then a hand grabbed her arm and she spun, ready to fight, but it was Isaac. His face was grim and there was a cut on his cheekbone that was bleeding, but his grip on her arm was gentle. "Come on," he said urgently. "This is going to get worse before it gets better." "I cannot leave," Hannah protested. "Dutch will fire me." "He is not paying you enough to die for him," Isaac said flatly. He pulled her toward the back door, the one that led to the alley behind the saloon. Hannah went with him, her heart pounding, just as she heard the distinctive crack of a gunshot inside. They emerged into the alley, and Isaac kept moving, pulling her around the corner to the relative safety of the next street. Only then did he release her arm and turn to face her, his eyes scanning her from head to toe. "Are you hurt?" he demanded. "No," Hannah said breathlessly. "Are you? Your face is bleeding." Isaac reached up and touched his cheek as if he had forgotten about the cut. "It is nothing." Some fool threw a wild punch. Hannah looked back toward the saloon. She could hear shouting and breaking glass. "I need to go back. I need this job." "Not until it is safe," Isaac said firmly. "If Dutch fires you for not wanting to die in a barroom brawl, then he is not worth working for anyway." "Easy for you to say," Hannah shot back, fear making her sharp. "You have a job at a ranch where people do not try to kill each other every other day. I have nothing. If I lose this position, I will have no money for rent, no way to buy food. I will end up on the street or worse." Isaac stepped closer to her, his expression intense. "Then you will come to the Double J. Jack's wife Martha has been looking for help with the house and the cooking. It would be safer than this. Better pay too." Hannah stared at him. "Why would they hire me on your word?" "Because I would vouch for you," Isaac said. "Because you are a hard worker and you deserve better than this." He gestured back toward the saloon where the sounds of chaos were finally beginning to die down. Hannah wanted to say yes. The offer was tempting, almost painfully so. But she had learned not to trust in easy solutions. "I do not need your charity," she said stiffly. "It is not charity," Isaac said, his voice softening. "Hannah, I have been watching you for weeks. You are strong and capable, and you do not give up no matter how hard things get. Martha would be lucky to have you, and you would be safer at the ranch. That is all I want, for you to be safe." Something in Hannah's chest cracked open. "Why?" she whispered. "Why do you care so much?" Isaac looked at her for a long moment, and in his eyes she saw something that made her breath catch. "I think you know why," he said quietly. Before Hannah could respond, Dutch came storming around the corner, his face red and furious. "Thompson, where the hell did you go? Get back inside and start cleaning up this mess." Hannah started to move automatically, conditioned to obey, but Isaac stepped between her and Dutch. "She is not going back in there until you make it safe," he said, his voice hard. "And you are going to pay her extra for what happened tonight." Dutch looked at Isaac, taking in his height and the gun on his hip, and apparently decided not to argue. "Fine, fine, whatever. Extra $1 for tonight. Now get in there and work." Isaac looked at Hannah, a question in his eyes. She hesitated, then nodded. She needed to see the job through, at least for tonight. But as she followed Dutch back into the saloon, stepping over broken glass and splintered wood, she found herself thinking about Isaac's offer, about safety and a better life, about the way he looked at her as if she mattered. The next morning, Isaac came to the saloon before it opened. Hannah was outside sweeping the boardwalk, trying to work up the courage to tell Dutch she was quitting. She had lain awake all night thinking about it, and she had decided that Isaac was right. She deserved better than this. She was tired of being afraid, tired of being alone, tired of feeling like her life had no value. "I talked to Jack and Martha this morning," Isaac said without preamble. "They want to meet you. Can you come out to the ranch today?" Hannah stopped sweeping. "You really meant it, about the job?" "Every word," Isaac said. His eyes were serious, hopeful. "Will you come?" Hannah took a deep breath. This was a leap of faith, and she had not had faith in much of anything for a very long time. But when she looked at Isaac, at the man who had checked on her 3 times every day for weeks, who had protected her and worried about her and asked nothing in return, she found that she wanted to try. She wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, her life could be different. "Yes," she said. "I will come." Isaac's face broke into a smile that transformed him, making him look younger and lighter. "I will wait while you tell Dutch." Telling Dutch was easier than Hannah expected, mostly because he barely seemed to care. He grumbled about having to find a replacement, but did not try to stop her. Hannah went upstairs to pack her meager belongings. Everything she owned fit into a single carpet bag, and when she came back down, Isaac was still waiting. They walked to the livery where Isaac had left his horse, a sturdy bay gelding with intelligent eyes. Isaac swung up into the saddle and then extended his hand to Hannah. She hesitated only a moment before taking it, allowing him to pull her up behind him. It was the closest she had ever been to him, and she was acutely aware of the solid warmth of his back as she settled onto the horse's rump and carefully placed her hands on his waist. The ride to the Double J took about half an hour. The ranch was set in a valley between red rock hills, with a creek running through it that gave life to cottonwood trees and green grass. The main house was made of adobe, sprawling and well-maintained, with a wide porch that offered shade from the relentless sun. There were several outbuildings, a barn, corrals, and Hannah could see cattle dotting the hills in the distance. Jack Jenkins turned out to be a man in his late 40s with sun-weathered skin and kind eyes. His wife Martha was a plump, cheerful woman with graying blonde hair and a smile that immediately put Hannah at ease. They invited her into the house, which was blessedly cool, and sat her down at a solid wooden table in the kitchen. Martha poured her a glass of cold water from the springhouse, and Hannah drank it gratefully. "Isaac tells us you have been working at the Red Rock Saloon," Martha said, settling into a chair across from her. "That must have been difficult." "It was work," Hannah said carefully. She did not want to seem like she was complaining, even though every word was true. "I needed the money." "Of course you did," Martha said warmly. "Well, we need help here. I am not getting any younger, and managing this house and cooking for the ranch hands is more than I can handle on my own anymore. The job would be housekeeping, cooking, laundry, that sort of thing. We can offer you $30 a month plus room and board. You would have your own room in the house, and you would eat with the family. Sundays off to rest or go into town if you like. Does that sound acceptable?" Hannah could barely believe what she was hearing. $30 a month was more than she had been making at the saloon, and room and board meant she would not have to worry about rent or food. "That sounds more than acceptable," she managed. "When would you want me to start? How about right now?" Martha said with a laugh. "Unless you need time to settle in first." "No," Hannah said quickly. "Now is perfect." And just like that, her life changed. Martha showed her to her room, which was small but clean and had an actual window with glass that was not broken. There was a real bed with a quilt, a washstand, a chest of drawers. It was more than Hannah had ever hoped for. She unpacked her few belongings, changed into a clean dress, and went to the kitchen to start learning her new duties. Martha was a patient teacher, showing her where everything was kept and explaining the rhythms of the ranch. There were currently 5 ranch hands, including Isaac, plus Jack and their 16-year-old son Thomas. Hannah would be cooking for 8 people 3 times a day, plus baking bread and keeping the house clean. It was hard work, but it was honest work, and she would be doing it in a place where people treated her with respect. Isaac came in for lunch with the other ranch hands, and Hannah served them stew and fresh bread. She caught his eye across the table, and he gave her a small smile that made her heart skip. After the meal, as the men were filing out, Isaac lingered. "How are you settling in?" he asked quietly. "It is wonderful," Hannah said honestly. "Thank you, Isaac, for this, for everything." "You do not need to thank me," he said. "I just wanted you somewhere safe." "You have checked on me 3 times a day for weeks," Hannah said, surprising herself with her boldness. "You have protected me, found me a better job, changed my entire life. I think thanks are in order." Isaac's ears turned red again, that endearing tell she was beginning to recognize. "I only did what any decent person would do." "No," Hannah said softly. "You did what a good man would do." "There is a difference." He held her gaze for a long moment, and Hannah felt something pass between them, something electric and frightening and wonderful all at once. Then Thomas called for Isaac from outside, and the moment broke. Isaac tipped his hat to her and left, but Hannah stood in the kitchen, her heart racing, knowing that something fundamental had shifted between them. The days settled into a rhythm. Hannah woke before dawn to start breakfast, worked through the day cooking and cleaning, and fell into bed exhausted but satisfied each night. It was hard work, harder in some ways than the saloon had been, but it was different because she was not afraid. No one grabbed at her or threatened her or made her feel small. Jack and Martha treated her like family, and the ranch hands were respectful. Thomas was a sweet boy who called her Miss Hannah and always thanked her for his meals, and Isaac still checked on her 3 times a day. In the morning when he came in for breakfast, at noon for lunch, and in the evening for supper. But it was different now because they were living on the same property, seeing each other constantly. Their conversations grew longer and more personal. Hannah learned that Isaac loved horses but had a healthy respect for cattle, that he had a younger sister back in Missouri he sent money to when he could, that his favorite food was apple pie, and he could not carry a tune to save his life. Isaac learned that Hannah had always wanted to learn to read better but never had the time or the books, that she was afraid of thunderstorms because her mother had died during one, that she had never been further than 50 miles from Seligman in her entire life. He started bringing her books from town, simple ones at first, and would sit with her in the evenings on the porch, patiently helping her sound out words she did not know. "You are a good teacher," Hannah said one evening in late August. They were sitting on the porch steps, the sun setting in a blaze of orange and pink over the red rock hills. Isaac had brought her a book of poems, and she was slowly working through one about a bird. "You are a quick learner," Isaac replied. He was sitting close enough that their shoulders almost touched, and Hannah was hyper-aware of the small distance between them. She set the book down and looked at him. "Isaac, can I ask you something? Anything? Why did you really start checking on me? That first day at the saloon, you did not know me. I could have been anyone, but you asked if I was hurt, and then you kept coming back. Why?" Isaac was quiet for a moment, staring out at the sunset. "Do you remember what I told you about my mother?" "Yes. I did not tell you all of it." He took a breath. "The day she died, I had been in town running errands for my father. When I got home, I found her collapsed in the kitchen. She had been canning preserves in the August heat, and her heart just gave out. She was alone. My father was in the fields, and she was alone, and no one was there to help her." His voice roughened. "I have carried that guilt for 12 years, the knowledge that she needed help and no one was there. So when I saw you standing behind that bar with bullets flying and no one caring whether you lived or died, I saw my mother, and I could not walk away." Hannah felt tears prick her eyes. She reached out and took his hand, threading her fingers through his. "I am sorry about your mother," she said softly. "But Isaac, that was not your fault. You were just a boy." "I know," he said, looking down at their joined hands. "But it does not change how I feel. It does not change the fact that I needed to make sure you were safe." "And now?" Hannah asked, her heart pounding. "Why do you still check on me now? I am safe here. You made sure of that." Isaac turned to face her fully, and in his gray eyes she saw everything she had been too afraid to hope for. "Because somewhere along the way, it stopped being about guilt and about my mother and started being about you," he said quietly. "It started being about the fact that I think you are the strongest, bravest woman I have ever met. That I look forward to seeing you 3 times a day, that I lie awake at night thinking about you, that I want to spend every moment I can in your presence." "Hannah," I know I have no right to feel this way. You have only been here a few weeks, and you have been through so much. And the last thing you probably need is some cowboy getting feelings for you, but I cannot help it. I have fallen in love with you." Hannah could not breathe. No one had ever said anything like that to her before. She had never even imagined that anyone would. "Isaac," she whispered. "You do not have to say anything," he said quickly. "I just needed you to know. I will keep checking on you 3 times a day whether you return my feelings or not, because your safety and happiness matter to me more than anything. But I needed to be honest with you." "Isaac," Hannah said again, stronger this time. "I need to tell you something too." He waited, his hand still in hers, his expression open and vulnerable in a way that made her chest ache. "I have never had someone worry about me," Hannah said slowly, choosing her words carefully. "Not since my father died. I have never had someone check on me, protect me, care whether I ate or slept or was happy. You have given me all of that. You have made me feel like I matter, like my life has value. And somewhere along the way, I started looking for you, started waiting for you to walk through the door, started thinking about you every moment you were not there. I think I have been falling in love with you since that first day when you offered me your handkerchief, but I was too scared to admit it. Too scared that it was not real, that it would not last, that I would lose it. But Isaac, I am tired of being scared. So yes, I love you too. I love you so much it terrifies me." Isaac's face transformed, and then he was cupping her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away tears she had not realized were falling. "Do not be terrified," he said softly. "I am not going anywhere. I will be here, checking on you 3 times a day for as long as you will let me." "What if I want more than that?" Hannah whispered. "What if I want you around all the time?" Isaac smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. "Then I guess you are in luck," he said, "because that is exactly what I want too." He kissed her then, gentle and sweet, and Hannah felt something inside her that had been frozen for years finally thaw. She kissed him back, pouring everything she felt into it, all the loneliness and fear and hope and love. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Isaac rested his forehead against hers. "I am going to marry you," he said. It was not a question, but Hannah answered anyway. "Yes," she said. "Yes, you are." They sat on that porch until the stars came out, talking and kissing and planning a future that suddenly seemed bright and possible. Isaac told her about the little piece of land he had been saving to buy, 50 acres just west of the Double J with a stream running through it and good grass for cattle. He had enough money saved for the land and some starter cattle, but he had been waiting for the right time. Now, with Hannah in his life, that time had come. Hannah told him about her dreams, small ones she had never dared to voice before. A real home with a garden. Children, maybe, if they were blessed. A life where she did not have to be afraid, where she could be happy. Isaac promised her all of it and more. They told Jack and Martha the next day, and the older couple was delighted. Martha hugged Hannah so tight she could barely breathe, and Jack clapped Isaac on the back and offered to help him with the land purchase. It turned out the 50 acres Isaac wanted actually belonged to Jack, who had been planning to sell it anyway. He offered Isaac a fair price and even offered to let him pay it off over time. Everything was falling into place so perfectly that Hannah kept waiting for something to go wrong. But weeks passed, and nothing did. Isaac worked during the day, saving every penny he could, and spent his evenings with Hannah. They talked about everything and nothing, learning each other inside and out. Isaac taught her to ride a horse, patient and encouraging when she was nervous. Hannah taught him to bake bread, laughing when his first attempt came out flat and hard as a rock. They were married on a Sunday in early October, when the brutal Arizona heat had finally broken and the air was cool and sweet. Martha made Hannah a dress of soft blue cotton, and one of the other ranch hands rode into town to fetch the traveling preacher. The ceremony was simple, held in the ranch house parlor with everyone gathered around. Hannah stood next to Isaac and felt like she was in a dream as they exchanged vows. I, Isaac Zimmerman, take you, Hannah Thompson, to be my wife. I promise to protect you, to cherish you, to check on you 3 times a day for the rest of our lives. I promise to love you in the good times and the hard times, and to build a life with you that is filled with joy. Hannah's voice shook as she said her own vows. I, Hannah Thompson, take you, Isaac Zimmerman, to be my husband. I promise to trust you, to love you, to build a home with you. I promise to be brave enough to accept your care and to give you mine in return. I promise to spend my life making you as happy as you have made me. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Isaac kissed her in front of everyone, and Hannah did not even feel embarrassed. She just felt happy, a deep, pure happiness she had never experienced before. They spent their wedding night in Hannah's room at the ranch house. It would be another month before their house on the new property was ready, and Jack and Martha had insisted they stay until then. Isaac was gentle and patient, and Hannah felt herself unfold like a flower that had been closed tight against the harsh world. Afterward, they lay tangled together, and Isaac traced patterns on her shoulder with his fingertips. I love you, Hannah Zimmerman, he said softly. Hannah smiled at her new name. I love you too, Isaac Zimmerman. Are you happy? He asked, and she could hear the vulnerability in the question. Happier than I ever thought possible, she answered honestly. You saved me, Isaac. You gave me a life worth living. No, Isaac said, tilting her face up so she could see the sincerity in his eyes. You saved yourself. You were the one brave enough to leave the saloon to take a chance on something better. I just made sure you knew you had options. You did the rest. Hannah thought about that. Maybe he was right. Maybe she had saved herself. But she could not have done it without him, without his 3 visits a day, without his steady presence reminding her that she was worth caring about. They had saved each other, really. He had needed someone to protect after failing to protect his mother, and she had needed someone to show her that she deserved to be protected. They fit together perfectly, 2 broken pieces making something whole. The next few weeks were a flurry of activity. Jack and several of the ranch hands helped Isaac build a house on their new property. It was small, just 3 rooms to start, but it was sturdy and well-made with a good roof and windows that actually closed. Hannah helped Martha during the days and spent her evenings at the new property with Isaac, planning where the garden would go, where they would build the barn when they could afford it, where the children would play someday. They moved into their house in early November. Jack gifted them a milk cow, and Martha gave Hannah seeds for the garden come spring, plus a setting hen and a rooster to start a flock of chickens. Isaac bought 10 head of cattle with his savings, and suddenly they were ranchers. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. The first few months were hard. They were learning everything as they went, figuring out how to manage the cattle, how to keep the house, how to make a life together. Isaac still worked part-time for Jack to bring in extra money, and Hannah took in laundry and mending from some of the other ranch families. They were poor, but they were happy, and every night when Isaac came home, he would find Hannah and ask the same questions he had been asking since that first day at the saloon. Are you all right? Are you happy? Is there anything you need? And Hannah would smile and kiss him and tell him yes, she was all right, she was happy, she had everything she needed right here. But she also noticed that Isaac still checked on her 3 times a day even though they were living together. He would find her in the morning before he went out to check the cattle, in the afternoon when he came in for the meal she had prepared, and in the evening when he returned from his work. Each time he would ask if she was well, if she needed anything, if she felt safe. It would have been suffocating if anyone else had done it, but from Isaac it just felt like love. Christmas came, their first as husband and wife. They could not afford much, but Isaac had carved her a beautiful set of wooden spoons for the kitchen, and Hannah had sewn him a new shirt from fabric she had traded eggs for. They ate a simple meal of roasted chicken and potatoes and held each other close as the winter wind howled outside their little house. "You miss your sister?" Hannah asked. They were lying in bed, wrapped in quilts against the cold. "Every day," Isaac admitted. "But I send her money when I can and I write to her. She is 18 now, almost grown. Maybe someday she can come out here." "I would like that," Hannah said. "I would like to meet her, to have family." "You have me," Isaac said, kissing her forehead. "And Jack and Martha practically consider you their daughter. And someday, God willing, we will have children of our own." Hannah placed her hand on her stomach, where she was beginning to suspect new life might be growing. It was too early to be sure, but she had missed her monthly courses and had been feeling queasy in the mornings. She had not told Isaac yet, wanting to be certain, but the possibility filled her with joy and terror in equal measure. By February, there was no doubt. Hannah was pregnant. She told Isaac one evening after supper, nervous about his reaction even though she knew he wanted children. But when she said the words, Isaac's face lit up like the sun, and he picked her up and spun her around, laughing. "We are going to be parents," he said wonderingly. "Hannah, we are going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" she asked, even though she could see that he was. "Happy does not even begin to cover it," Isaac said. He set her down gently, then immediately looked worried. "Are you feeling all right? Should you be resting? What do you need?" Hannah laughed. "Isaac, women have been having babies since the beginning of time. I am fine. I just need you to stop spinning me around." "Right, of course," Isaac said, but from that day forward he was even more attentive than before. He insisted that Hannah rest more, that she not lift anything heavy. He took over more of the chores around the house even though he was already working from dawn to dusk. Hannah found it endearing and exasperating in turns, but mostly she just felt loved. Martha came to visit often, bringing advice and baby clothes she had saved from when Thomas was small. She taught Hannah what to expect, how to prepare, and promised to be there when the baby came. The other ranch wives also rallied around, these women who had been strangers a year ago but were now friends. Hannah, who had spent so much of her life alone, suddenly found herself surrounded by people who cared about her. It was overwhelming in the best possible way. The baby came in late September, after a long, hard labor that left Hannah exhausted and Isaac pale with worry. But when Martha finally placed their son in Hannah's arms, all the pain was forgotten. He was perfect, with a cap of dark hair and eyes that would probably turn the same storm gray as his father's. They named him James, after Hannah's father. Isaac cried when he held his son for the first time, tears streaming down his face as he looked at the tiny life they had created. "I promise I will always protect you," he whispered to James. "I will check on you every day, make sure you are safe and loved and happy. You will never wonder if you matter, because I will make sure you know." Hannah watched her husband cradle their son and felt her heart overflow. This man who had started checking on her 3 times a day in a dusty saloon, who had worried about a stranger's safety, who had shown her that she was worth loving, was now promising the same devotion to their child. She knew without a doubt that Isaac would keep that promise, just as he had kept every promise he had ever made to her. The years that followed were full and rich. They had 2 more children, a daughter named Sarah who had Hannah's brown eyes and stubborn chin, and another son they called Daniel who was quiet and thoughtful like his father. The ranch grew slowly but steadily. Isaac proved to be a talented rancher, and Hannah's careful management of their money meant they were able to buy more cattle, more land. By 1890, they had 200 acres and 100 head of cattle. They had built onto the house, adding bedrooms for the children and a proper parlor. Isaac's sister, whose name was Iris, did eventually come to Arizona. She was 21 by then, a pretty young woman with Isaac's dark hair and a shy smile. She stayed with them for a year, and during that time she met and married one of Jack's ranch hands, a good man named Samuel Reed. They built a house on the other side of the Double J, and suddenly, Hannah had the sister she had always wanted. Life was not always easy. There were droughts that killed the grass and made the cattle thin. There were harsh winters and scorching summers. There were illnesses and injuries and all the normal hardships of ranching life. But through it all, Isaac never stopped checking on Hannah 3 times a day. Even when he was working far from the house, he would ride back mid-morning and mid-afternoon just to see her, to ask if she was all right, to kiss her and tell her he loved her. The ranch hands teased him about it, but Isaac did not care. He needed to know his wife was safe, and that was that. Hannah never tired of it. Even after years of marriage, even after 3 children and countless days of domestic routine, she still felt her heart lift every time Isaac appeared in the doorway. She still felt cherished and protected and loved. And she made sure to show him the same devotion, to tell him every day how much he meant to her, to create a home that was warm and welcoming and filled with laughter. The children grew. James was serious and responsible, already helping his father with the cattle by the time he was 12. Sarah was fierce and independent, always getting into scrapes and driving her mother to distraction, but making them laugh with her wild spirit. Daniel was gentle and artistic, preferring to draw pictures of the desert landscape than work with the livestock. And Isaac and Hannah encouraged all of his interests, even though they were not typical for a rancher's son. By 1895, 13 years after that first day in the saloon, Hannah and Isaac were in their late 30s and the ranch was thriving. They had money in the bank, a beautiful home, healthy children, and a love that had only deepened with time. One evening, after the children were in bed, they sat on the porch swing Isaac had built, watching the stars come out over the red rock hills. "Do you remember the day we met?" Hannah asked, her head resting on Isaac's shoulder. "Every detail," Isaac said. "You were standing behind that bar covered in broken glass, and you looked so alone, so determined to be strong even though you had to be terrified." "I was terrified," Hannah admitted, "all the time back then. Terrified that I would not make rent, that someone would hurt me, that I would spend the rest of my life in that awful place. And then you walked in and asked if I was hurt, and for the first time in years, I felt like maybe I was not completely alone in the world." "You were never alone after that," Isaac said. "I made sure of it." Hannah smiled. "Yes, you did. 3 times a day every day for 13 years. Do you know you still do it? Even now." "Of course I do," Isaac said. "Why would I stop?" "Most husbands do not check on their wives 3 times a day. Most husbands do not love their wives as much as I love you," Isaac said simply. He turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "Hannah, you saved my life just as much as I saved yours. Before I met you, I was drifting. Working, existing, but not really living. I carried so much guilt about my mother, so much regret. But loving you, protecting you, building this life with you has given me purpose, has healed something in me I did not even realize was broken. So yes, I check on you 3 times a day. And I will keep doing it until the day I die, because taking care of you is the greatest privilege of my life." Tears streamed down Hannah's face, but they were happy tears. "I love you," she said. "I love you so much, Isaac Zimmerman. You are the best thing that ever happened to me." "The feeling is entirely mutual, Mrs. Zimmerman," Isaac said, and kissed her under the stars, the same way he had kissed her on this very porch 13 years ago when she had first admitted she loved him. As the new century approached, the Zimmerman family continued to flourish. James, at 17, was already being courted by a sweet girl from town named Elizabeth, and Hannah suspected there would be a wedding within a few years. Sarah, at 14, was declaring she would never marry and would instead become a famous painter, much to her parents' amusement. Daniel, at 11, was still the quiet dreamer, happy with his sketchbooks and his solitary rides through the desert. Isaac and Hannah watched their children grow with pride and gratitude. They had given their children what neither of them had growing up: safety, stability, and the absolute certainty that they were loved. The Zimmerman Ranch was known throughout the territory as a place of warmth and hospitality. Neighbors knew they could always count on Isaac and Hannah for help in hard times, and the couple had built a reputation for fairness and kindness. One day in the spring of 1899, Hannah was working in her garden when she saw a young woman walking up the road toward their house. The girl looked exhausted, dusty from travel, and there was a desperation in her eyes that Hannah recognized. It was the same look she had seen in her own reflection 17 years ago, when she was working at the Red Rock Saloon and wondering if her life would ever be anything more than fear and exhaustion. Hannah set down her trowel and walked to meet the girl. "Can I help you?" she asked gently. The girl, who could not have been more than 19 or 20, looked at her with a mixture of hope and despair. "I heard in town that you might be looking for help. I can work hard. I can cook and clean and tend animals. I just need a job, a safe place." Hannah's heart squeezed. She and Isaac had not been looking for help, but looking at this girl, she knew what she had to do. "What is your name?" she asked. "Lily," the girl said. "Lily Wright. I have been working at a saloon in Flagstaff, but I had to leave. It was not safe anymore." Her voice cracked on the last words. Hannah did not need to hear the details. She understood. "Come inside," she said. "Let us get you some water and food, and then we will talk." She brought Lily into the house and settled her at the kitchen table, where she served her cold water and leftover bread and stew from lunch. Lily ate like she was starving, and Hannah felt her own eyes sting with tears. This could have been her. If Isaac had not walked into the Red Rock Saloon 17 years ago, if he had not started checking on her 3 times a day, if he had not shown her there was a better life possible, she could have ended up like Lily, desperate and alone and running from danger. When Isaac came in for his afternoon check, he took one look at Lily and then at Hannah, and understanding passed between them. That night, after the children were in bed and Lily was settled in the spare room, Hannah told Isaac the whole story. "We have to help her," Hannah said. "I know we were not looking for help, but Isaac, she is me 17 years ago. She needs someone to care about her safety, someone to give her a chance." Isaac cupped Hannah's face in his hands. "Of course we will help her," he said. "How could we not? You have such a big heart, Hannah. It is one of the million reasons I love you." So Lily Wright became part of the Zimmerman household. She helped Hannah with the house and the garden, and slowly, the haunted look in her eyes began to fade. She laughed at Daniel's jokes, helped Sarah with her painting, and listened to James talk about Elizabeth with a wistful expression. Hannah and Isaac treated her like family, and gradually, Lily began to heal. 2 years later, Lily married one of the ranch hands, a good man named Peter who was patient and kind and treated her like she was precious. At the wedding, held at the Zimmerman Ranch, Lily hugged Hannah and whispered, "Thank you for saving me." "Thank my husband," Hannah whispered back. "He taught me what it means to care about someone's safety. I am just passing it forward." But that night, when Hannah told Isaac what Lily had said, he shook his head. "No," he said. "You did that all on your own. You saw someone who needed help and you gave it, no hesitation. You have always had that kindness in you, Hannah. You just needed someone to show you that you were worthy of kindness too." As the years continued to pass, the Zimmerman Ranch became known as a place of refuge. Other young women in difficult situations found their way to Hannah's door, and she never turned anyone away. Some stayed just a few weeks until they got back on their feet. Others, like Lily, became permanent parts of their extended family. Isaac supported Hannah in every decision, trusting her judgment and helping however he could. James married Elizabeth in 1902, and they built a house on the western edge of the ranch property. 2 years later, they gave Hannah and Isaac their first grandchild, a boy they named Isaac after his grandfather. Hannah cried when she held him, this tiny life that carried on the legacy of love and safety and family that she and Isaac had built. Sarah did not become a famous painter, but she did marry an artist from back east who had come to Arizona to paint the desert landscapes. They moved to Santa Fe, where Sarah opened a gallery and finally found a place where her wild spirit fit perfectly. She wrote home regularly, and Hannah treasured every letter. Daniel remained on the ranch, taking over more and more of the day-to-day operations as Isaac got older. He never married, content with his solitary life and his art, but he was a devoted son and uncle and a skilled rancher. The ranch continued to prosper under his management. By 1910, Hannah and Isaac were in their late 50s. Their hair was gray, their hands were weathered by decades of hard work, but their love was as strong as ever. Isaac still checked on Hannah 3 times a day, though now his visits were shorter and sometimes he needed to rest between. Hannah would find him in the kitchen at breakfast, in the parlor at midday, and on the porch at evening, always asking the same questions. "Are you all right? Are you happy? Do you need anything?" And Hannah would always answer yes, she was all right, she was happy, she had everything she needed, because it was true. She had Isaac, their children, their grandchildren, their ranch, their friends, their community. She had a life so full and rich that sometimes she could hardly believe it was real. One evening in the fall of 1912, 30 years after they had met, Hannah and Isaac were sitting on the porch watching the sunset. Their great-grandchildren, James and Elizabeth's grandchildren, were playing in the yard, their laughter carrying on the cool desert air. Hannah reached over and took Isaac's hand, threading her fingers through his the way she had that first night they had confessed their love. "Isaac," she said softly, "do you remember what you told me the first time we sat on this porch together, when you first said you loved me? I told you I would check on you 3 times a day for as long as you would let me," Isaac said, smiling at the memory. "You have kept that promise every single day for 30 years, Hannah said. "Even when you were sick, even when you were exhausted, even when I told you it was not necessary. You have never stopped making sure I was safe and happy." "It was never a burden," Isaac said. "It was always a joy. Taking care of you, loving you, it is what gives my life meaning. You gave me a life I never dreamed was possible," Hannah said, her voice thick with emotion. "I was so alone, so scared, so certain that I did not matter to anyone. And then you walked into that saloon and asked if I was hurt, and everything changed. You showed me that I was worthy of love, of protection, of happiness. You gave me a family, a home, a purpose. You gave me everything, Isaac." "No," Isaac said, turning to face her fully. His gray eyes, still as intense as they had been 30 years ago, held hers. "You gave me everything, Hannah. You gave me a reason to live instead of just exist. You gave me children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. You built this home, this refuge where people who are hurting can find safety. You took the care I showed you and multiplied it 100-fold, spreading it to everyone who needed it. You are the strongest, kindest, most incredible woman I have ever known, and loving you has been the greatest adventure of my life." They kissed as the sun set. Two people who had found each other in the hardest of circumstances and built something beautiful together. Around them, their family laughed and played, secure in the knowledge that they were loved and protected and safe. It was the legacy Hannah and Isaac had created, a legacy of care and kindness that would continue long after they were gone. Hannah rested her head on Isaac's shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart, and thought about the girl she had been 30 years ago. That scared, lonely girl standing behind a bar with bullets flying and broken glass at her feet, thinking she had to face the world alone. She wished she could go back and tell that girl that everything would be all right, that a man with storm-gray eyes would walk through the door and change her entire life, that he would check on her 3 times a day and make her feel cherished and safe, that she would find love and family and happiness beyond her wildest dreams. But she could not go back. She could only move forward, carrying that girl's memories with her, using them to recognize others who needed help. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. "I love you, Isaac Zimmerman," Hannah whispered into the gathering dusk. "I love you, Hannah Zimmerman," Isaac replied, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "3 times a day, every day for the rest of my life." And he kept that promise until the very end, checking on his wife every morning, every afternoon, and every evening, making sure she knew she was loved. When Isaac passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1918 at the age of 61, Hannah grieved deeply, but found comfort in the life they had built together. She lived another 15 years, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, all of whom had been shaped by the love Isaac and Hannah had shown them. On her own deathbed in 1933, at the age of 73, Hannah was surrounded by family. James held one hand and Daniel held the other, while Sarah sat at the foot of the bed. They told her about the ranch, how it was thriving, how it would continue for generations. They told her about all the women over the years who she had helped, how many lives she had touched, how her legacy of kindness would never be forgotten. As Hannah drifted toward sleep for the last time, she could have sworn she saw Isaac standing in the doorway, young and strong and smiling, asking her if she was all right, if she was happy, if she needed anything. And she smiled and whispered yes, she was all right, she was happy, she had everything she needed. She had lived a life full of love and purpose, all because one cowboy had cared enough to check on her 3 times a day. And now, finally, she could rest.